This is me just giving you a break from that song that everyone is putting in their videos. Feel free to use my version instead. Ooh, it's in bar, don't be bar. Can I get a milky bar? Ooh,
Sound matters. Be heard. Welcome to the podcast where you get exclusive behind-the-scenes tips to make your own show sound truly spectacular. This is Podtastic Audio.
Hey, what's happening and how are you doing? How is your show coming along? Do you have a podcast? Well, maybe you're thinking about starting a podcast and I don't even know where or how or what equipment I need to get. Don't you worry about all that crazy nonsense. I'm here to help you out. I am Chris, and I am from the original Chris and Christine Show podcast, launching that show in the summer of 2019. Here we are, 2023, as I record this episode today. So this is Podtastic Audio, the show that I have created to help you make a better sounding podcast for your show. And perhaps maybe you're like on the fence of starting a show, like how do I do it, what do I need to get? You know, don't you worry. I'll hook you up. I'll get you all figured out. Let's get this thing running and rolling. I think podcasting is amazing. So amazing that just over the weekend in Las Vegas, I wasn't there, but I had a buddy of mine from work who was in Las Vegas. He stumbled upon the Wynn Hotel where we stays at. And in the lobby, they have this brand new like podcasting studio. I'm talking, this thing looks amazing. I saw pictures of it. I was like, wow, this thing looks better than like some of the best newsroom studios you've ever seen in your life. Very clean, lots of lighting, a lot of cool ambient lighting, nice table. They all got the great microphones. But one thing I did notice about the podcasting studio at the Wynn was that it was very clean and clear, and there wasn't any gadgets that I could see in the pictures. It looked like it just had like a bar area where people were kind of like positioned behind it with their microphones right in front of them, kind of like 3 or 4 chairs in this kind of sweeping kind of bar with a really cool backdrop behind them with lights and stuff and all kinds of ambient lighting around the area and stuff. And on the back side, across from that, it had another wall with another booth that had, looks like 2 microphones coming up to 2 sitting chairs kind of sitting over there. So maybe they do podcasting from that side of the room, and then the main show might be in front of the big backdrop section of the room. I didn't see any cameras. I didn't see any like equipment or anything. It just had the boom arms with the, of course, SM7B microphones attached. Literally, if you're going to do a amazing podcasting setup with probably, I have no idea if this thing costs, maybe $100,000, $1 million. I don't know what this stuff costs, but if you're going to do that in Las Vegas, you got to have the best. And everybody who does a podcast like that, who's got tons of money, you literally will fly your guests in to stay at the hotel and do a show right there. It must be an amazing experience to do a podcast from a studio like that. Like almost as good as like a radio station, maybe even better. I mean, some new radio stations do look quite as good as that studio did. But I'm just saying that if you got the money and you got money to burn on a podcast studio, then go right ahead and knock yourself out. Let me know how it is. Maybe I can stop by there and do a show. That'd be great. And I wonder, this actual studio, and going back to it, is that I believe they actually are probably renting out that studio for shows, like bigger shows, to produce their podcasts in. We're talking big celebrity type shows, sports shows, stars, things like that. They actually come into town if they're there. It could be done for like, I know the Raiders are in town in Vegas. Maybe they got Raiders players. They'll do a show from that studio or anything. I just kind of, it makes you kind of think that like podcasting is so big that now big companies and big like casinos are making podcast studios in their casino so everybody can get a taste of this podcasting. Everybody wants to be part of this whole podcasting thing, and I think it's wonderful. Now, speaking of spending lots and lots of money on podcasting, one of the biggest news stories that broke over the last week or two ago was the Prince Harry and Meghan Markle had a podcast, and I do say had a podcast on Spotify, and they were paid somewhere in the ballpark, I hear, of $20 million to create content for the podcast. Now, listen, I'm not from the UK. I don't follow the royal family at all. I could give two rips about who they marry and what day they're marrying and all this stuff. I'm sorry the queen died. That's very sad, but it's not something that I was really into. So for me, it's like whatever. And whatever to their podcast, because Spotify decided to say, you know what? We are not going to bring you back. It's almost like a lease on an apartment where you think you're going to renew your lease for the next year or whatever it is, and the landlord drops off a little note on your door. And you always kind of dread those notes when you see a note. It's either the rent's going to go up or perhaps maybe they're not going to renew a lease. It happened to me twice. I've seen both of those different notes. I've seen a note that says, by the way, if you want to stay with us, your rent is going to be a lot more than you're paying right now. And I've also, unfortunately, seen the note that says, we are no longer going to accept you as tenants at the end of this lease. See you later. So Spotify decided to do that and say, see you later, because probably, if you think about it, $20 million is not chump change. Even for somebody like Spotify, that's a lot of money. And when you spend any kind of money on a podcast like that, you have to deliver really good content. Now, Spotify, they must have been thinking that it's Harry and Meghan Markle. They're like the biggest couple in the world. So why would we not offer them a podcast deal for them to talk about their wonderful and great lives that everybody in the world must be so curious and fascinated with? Now, I don't really give a crap. I didn't listen to their show. I have no idea what it was about. I do know that the only reason people would really tune into their show is when they're really complaining about the royal family. They're doing their thing, hating. I know that interview they did with Oprah, it was extremely popular because she really asked them questions that everybody wanted to know. And their questions were basically about the royals and their situation, leaving the royal family and moving around and doing their own thing, which is great and all. But other than that, like, do we really care what Meghan ate for dinner last week? Do we really care about maybe the walk she did down the park with whoever? Do we really care about our trip to the store? Nobody really cares about that stuff. So for that, I don't think the podcast did very well. And I think Spotify bought in thinking it's going to be one thing, but was sold another thing. So this just proves that you really have to have solid, decent content to hold an audience. You may draw them in with a big name or the celebrity. The celebrity name kind of draws you in, right? But good content is what actually keeps you there. Hey, look, it's really easy to get one download. Sometimes it's very hard to get two. And if that is not bad enough, one of the worst things I've heard, rumors going around the podcasting community, is that Meghan Markle, she actually faked all of her podcast interviews, or at least a good majority of them she was not a part of. You see, a staff member would actually physically do the audio recording for the interview with the said celebrity or the said guest. And then through some editing, she would just ask the question off a piece of paper and they would just splice it in. Now, I know everyone's freaking out, like, how dare she? But think about this. They've been doing this for years in television and radio broadcasting. Now, if you think about the original American Idol television show, which was very popular here in the United States, I don't know if they brought it back. They did. I used to love watching it in its heyday. We're talking probably like 2005-ish is when it was super, really popular. And one thing about that television show, if you don't know what it is, it's a singing competition where people go in front of these judges that are supposed to be these big shots, producers, singers, really big VIP people in the music industry. You would audition a cappella right in front of these judges, and then based on all three of them, whether they like you or don't like you, they move you to the next round, which means you go to Hollywood, and then you're in this big group camp over there, and you perform, and more judges and more judging and more. They whittle it down to, like, I think it's a top 20 or top 12, whatever it is. They whittle it down from starting out with probably, I don't know, maybe 1 million or 2 contestants, and they whittle it down to like 12 over the course of the competition. But the very first part of the show is these live auditions. And you think when you watch all the blooper reels and all the really bad acts that people getting in front of the judges and singing their hearts out, and they're just screwing the lines up left and right. They're just screwing things up, and they sound horrible. We watch it because it's a big train wreck. I mean, everybody loves that. Everybody loves a car crash, and that's basically what it is. It's like watching a live car crash on television, and then watching what the judges say in response back to them, like, oh my gosh, how could you? It's horrible. It sounded like chimpanzees, chopping their tongues off and trying to sing something. I don't know. And the funny part is that a lot of that, what you see, is actually fake. It's not real. The part of them singing very badly, and you think they're singing it right in front of the judges, they very well could be singing right in front of a studio producer. That part's getting recorded on the singer part, and then they might take a clip of the judge saying something else. They'll splice them together. They may never meet. Chances are they probably never will meet, but it makes it look like they were there singing right in front of these VIP judges, and the VIP judges were saying something horrible about their singing to their face. But you don't really see that because you see the way it's edited. You just see a shot of the judge. You see a different shot of the singer. You never see them in the same room. And that's probably because they never were. It's very similar to what Meghan Markle was doing, was that their producers were actually doing the interviews, and she was just coming in, a clip of her saying the questions as if she was there in the same place. Now, if it was video and they're in the same room and you can see them both like on a couch or something, that takes a little more CGI to fake that stuff. But if you're just dealing with audio, it's extremely easy to do. I can do it. I've done it before on this show just for fun and things like that. But I know people are giving her a hard time for not physically doing the interviews and getting paid $20 million, which is kind of crazy to think about. So if you are on your podcasting journey and you're about to physically start your podcast and launch your podcast for the first time, and you feel so overwhelmed with so much stuff because you hear these big names, you hear these big numbers, you see all these flashy studios, and you see this flashy equipment, and you're getting like, oh my gosh, it's so much. I don't even know where to begin. And that's what happens. People actually will not make a podcast because they feel very intimidated by all the extra stuff that goes along with it. And it doesn't have to be that. I mean, you literally and physically could create a podcast right now directly onto your smartphone that you're holding in your hand. There's apps out there. There's recording apps out there you can use. I've mentioned a few on the show. I know almost every smartphone's got some kind of recording app built right into it. Get that file. You can send it directly to a podcast host like Anchor or Spotify for podcasters. There's lots of them out there. I think Podbean even has a feature where you can physically record a show directly on your phone and send it directly into Podbean. You don't have to even touch a computer. You don't even need that. Now, is it going to be any good? I don't know. I just don't think that a podcast has ever gone to number one in the charts that was recorded on a smartphone. Not saying it can't be done, just like I don't think a well-produced movie for Hollywood was ever shot entirely on an iPhone. Maybe there's been one out there, or maybe someone's working on one right now. It's going to be like the iPhone shot movie. I don't know. I like to see it happen and just to see what we can actually do. And maybe compare it to what an actual movie looks like. I know the new phones are getting very good cameras, and they've got very good microphones these days. Everything looks great, sounds great. But even still, I would rather have you use a physical computer and a physical microphone. Now, the microphone of choice that I recommend anybody starting a show today with nothing, I would recommend getting yourself a Samsung Q2U microphone because it doesn't cost very much. It sounds great, and you can plug it into your computer, any computer for that matter. You can plug it directly into that, or if you have an interface like a Rodecaster or any kind of XLR connection, you can plug it directly into that too. I have that too. And just the other day, I was about to get a new client of mine for Podtastic Audio. Now, I was talking to my new client about all of the technical aspects that you may need to physically start a podcast. And I think he might have been a little overwhelmed with all of the gear and stuff. And I wasn't talking about a lot of crazy things. I was saying you get yourself a Samsung Q2U. We'll figure out the artwork. Let's figure out a name. And I think it was so much that it kind of overwhelmed the poor guy because I don't think he was very tech savvy. So when I threw all this stuff at him, it might have been just too much. So from here on out, every new client that I get, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give them for free a brand new Samsung Q2U microphone and a pair of DJ studio headphones to go with it for free. Because once they have the physical items in their hands, I think it makes it much easier to actually get a podcast started because now you feel like you have this stuff. It's not so complicated. And also, too, is that if I'm going to have a new client that knows absolutely nothing about podcasting, knows nothing about RSS, knows nothing about microphones or anything, then I'm going to steer them in the right direction. I'm going to give them the tools they need to be successful. And a Samsung Q2U will get the job done. You can use it with any situation. I love them for how simple they are and how great they sound. Now, they are not the best microphones. In fact, if you have extra money and it's just you starting out creating a podcast, then I would recommend getting the brand new Rode PodMic USB/XLR because it's going to sound phenomenal. I'm talking into a Rode PodMic right now. It's not the USB version. It's just the regular version, but I absolutely love these things. I think they sound phenomenal when paired with a Rodecaster Pro 2 set on the Rode PodMic settings. But the Rode USB mic can plug directly into any computer with a USB port. Plug it right in. You're good to go. And with built-in software, you can make it sound just as good as a Rodecaster right out of the box for $200. Now, $200 is a little more than the $70 for the Samsung Q2U microphone, but it depends on what you're going to use your podcast for. And I asked my new client, I asked him, why are you doing the podcast and who would be your ideal listener to your show? He had a hard time answering those things. And if you have a hard time trying to figure out who the show really is for, we need to figure this out because you can't make a show for everyone. I know everybody wants to do that. My show's for everybody. Everybody can listen. Yes, everybody can physically listen. But when you make a show, you really want to design a show specifically for one target type of person, whoever that person is. In fact, they even do this in radio. At the radio stations, especially like you think about the radio station that has more of like, I like to call it like the soccer mom type music, like the soft rock, that kind of stuff. They actually would have an actual person. They're saying our ideal avatar listener to the station, let's call her, I don't know, Karen. And she is a soccer mom with 3 kids and her husband, works in finance and they've got a home with a picket fence and she drives a minivan and whatever. So once you know those things, you can kind of design a show based on those factors. So when you do talk to that person, you're really talking to that person, that Karen person, who you're actually talking to. So if you really can do that with your podcast, you really will have a much better and polished show because it'll be tuned directly to that one ideal listener that you already had imagined in your mind. But hey, listen, you can podcast however you want to podcast. It's your show. Don't let me or anybody else tell you exactly how to do your own show. If you're having fun, you're having a great time doing your podcast, then keep doing it. Have fun, But listen, if you want to change your show, if you want a better show, if you want more downloads, or maybe you want more personal engagement with your show, how many people are actually writing you and saying, thank you for creating an amazing show? Thank you. Not your guest, not something else, but how many people are actually thanking you personally for putting on an amazing podcast? And I'm not talking about ratings and reviews, not at all. What I'm talking about is somebody emailing you, DMing you, or maybe even giving you a phone call if you know the person personally and said, you know what? Hey, that was a great show you just did. I really enjoy listening to your podcast. That was great. Keep up the great work. That was fantastic. And that stuff means the world to a podcaster. We all love praise. We all love hearing it. We all love it when somebody physically listens to our podcast, which is always great. But when they listen and say, that was a really good thing you did, I really do enjoy that. Or even better, they say something like, you know what, I was going through some hard times, and the things you said on your show really helped me focus and really helped me get through those most difficult times in my life. I really want to say thank you so much, because that really helped me out, and I do appreciate your show, and I do listen for every episode, and I look forward to hearing more episodes. Thank you for doing what you're doing. This is great. And we all love hearing that. But if you're not hearing any of those things, if you're hearing crickets and you've been doing your show for 3 years and you've heard nothing, well, then maybe you might want to change it. I know change is really hard for us to do. Like, I don't like change. Nobody likes change. But it's these little things that we can all do to perhaps make a better podcast for your audience. I'm always thinking, what would my audience benefit from, and what would they value from listening to this podcast? You see, I do the show for you, the listener. I don't do this to boost my ego. I don't do this show to try to talk to VIP celebrities or try to interview big wigs or whatever. I don't do it for any of that nonsense. I do it because I actually enjoy creating a podcast. And as a content creator, I do enjoy like actually creating stuff. It might sound weird for a lot of people. Like, you actually enjoy it? You do it for free? What do you mean? I don't know. I just love doing it. It's just me. It's how I do it, you know? And it got me thinking, like, just the other day, I had a sponsor reach out to me for Podtastic Audio here, and they say, well, want to be a sponsor of my show. And I'm not a big fan of sponsors or ads. I could care less. And I think the reason why, because I did mention to somebody else, and they thought I was nuts for turning down a sponsor. Now, I haven't turned them down yet. I just gave them a crazy offer saying I'll do it, but it's going to cost you a lot of money because I'm not a big fan of sponsorships, so whatever. But it got me thinking like this. Sponsorships and ads are like recycling aluminum cans, right? I got a trash can outside the house here, and I've put cans and recycling in it. Every week, I fill it up, and every week or so, or 2 or 3 weeks, it gets kind of full. So we bag it up, we run it over to the recycling, and I take the kids with me, and I let them sort all the cans on the little sorting table they have, you know, plastic bottles, cans, they sort it out, and we might get $12 at the most from doing this whole can sorting with a couple bags, right? So when it comes to ads and sponsors, I feel it's kind of the same way. It's all this work for very little payout. So I'm like, nobody I know has ever gotten rich from ads on their podcast. If you're lucky, and I mean if you're really lucky, you might actually get enough money from ads and sponsors to physically pay for your equipment and physically pay for your hosting and all your services that you pay for, whether it's you're paying for Zoom, paying for StreamYard, Riverside, whatever. It might pay for that stuff if you're lucky. Now, that's very far and few in between, because to get ads, at least any kind of ads that would pay the kind of money that you would need to pay for your stuff, you have to have decent download numbers. And if you do not have decent download numbers and you can't prove that you actually have decent download numbers, then you're kind of stuck. What do you do? So let's just see if this sponsor actually comes back to me with an offer. I did give him an offer. I said, I'll get you a contract right now. This is what's going to cost you. It's not cheap, but if you want to do that, you go right ahead, because I don't care. I do not care if I have a sponsor or an ad on this show. I could give 2 rips. What do I care about that? Why would I work on getting an ad and sponsor for my show just so I can make like pennies? Or a few dollars or whatever it is. It's a small amount. I make my podcasting money from my podcasting services. Podtastic Audio, podcasting made easy, where I physically record, edit, and produce shows for businesses and people if they want to do that too. That is where I actually make the podcasting money. So when people ask me about sponsors, I say, listen, I sponsor myself. I'm the product. It's my show. It's the things that I sell, that I do for others that are valuable to me. So why would I give up that airspace to something else for a mere few dollars when I could be advertising my own self and my own products. Hey, podcasting is fun. It can be whatever you want it to be. You put in what you're going to get out. And if you're going to make an amazing show that you want to listen to and that you're going to be proud of, then go ahead and make that dream podcast a reality. Hey, thank you once again for listening to this episode. And if you know anybody, or perhaps maybe you're on the fence of maybe creating a podcast, and you're like, I don't even know how or where, don't you worry, I will hook you up. You gotta head on over to podtasticaudio.com/easy, and I will personally help you design and create and even record your podcast for you. And I will catch you on the next episode.